Hello, I'm John Gertz, SETI theorist, and today I want to continue our discussion of the Drake equation with the last three factors, F sub I, F sub C, and L. F sub I denotes that fraction of life-bearing planets or moons on which at least one technologically competent intelligence species has evolved. Now, let's remember that SETI is the search for intelligent species that can be detected by their technology. It's not the search of all. It's not a search of all possible intelligent species. Um, those that have no detectable technology, such as dolphins, parrots, octopuses on our planet, are by definition not part of SETI. Pessimists, or SETI pessimists, I should say, will argue that only one species of all the billions of species that have ever existed on planet Earth has ever become technologically competent. And that because it was such a fluke of fate that is irrepeatable, would never have happened again. And the argument basically goes like this: that had the asteroid not wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago, then those rat sized mammals of that era who were living in the crevices and nooks and crannies and caves and burrows and so forth would never, or up high in the trees, would and nocturnally, would living just by on the margins. They never would have come out and without fear of being devoured by the dinosaurs and being and thereby evolving into something that eventually becomes technological. I don't particularly buy this argument for a variety of reasons. Homo sapiens may be a fluke of fate, but evolution of general intelligence certainly is not. So, for example, there are species of both whales and dolphins and so forth, where you can see where brain size has evolved over time in a way that's not dissimilar to the way that early hominid brain size evolved or I'm sorry, grew through evolution over time. And general intelligence is like eyesight or flight. It's across many species. So even so, for example, cephalopods, who are octopuses, squids, cuttlefish, and so on, are highly intelligent animals. Um, they have no evolutionary confluence with us. And yet they've managed to evolve very similar general intelligence. In their particular case, it may have been because they originally had shells and they lost their shells in favor of a new strategy of evading predators by and catching prey through the use of general intelligence. Their long list of tricks that they can pull off, but the point of the argument is that that's it. It's generalized. They can adapt their tricks and their trades and their strategies according to circumstances. Some level of intelligence has been found in all species. For example, slime molds and fungal mycelium can be trained to successfully navigate a labyrinth for a nutritional reward. In fact, just about any microbe will display intelligence in the way that it moves towards or away from light, nutrition, or danger. Ants seem very hardwired and very limited in that respect. But if one stands back and regards an entire colony to be what E.O. Wilson called a superorganism, wherein every ant is analogous to the cell of another of animals, then the colony can be seen as acting in a highly intelligent manner, adapting to all manner of novel threats and opportunities. Honeybees, when they swarm, will send scouts in various directions to find the best location for a new hive. When the scouts return to the swarm body, then they opine. It seems as though they're each individually opining on what they found through their waggle dances, and a collective decision seems to be made based upon who's telling the best, which bee is waggling a story that is the most favorable story. So then there's the argument that this flukiness Homo sapiens evolution towards technological competence could never be repeated because we climbed up the trees because we needed opposable thumbs to do that, and then when we came down from the trees, those opposable thumbs could be used for tool making and so forth. Irrepeatable, but I don't buy that. You know, dinosaurs ruled the earth for 150 million years, and of course, we've never discovered a dinosaur city or a sports car or any of that. But during that same 150 million years, mammals were there too. They were just in the shadows in the burrows. They were not the dominant players on the planet, but they were there. And they didn't involve any cities or sports cars or anything else. So yes, it's true. If the asteroid or comet that hit Earth missed it by an hour or something, dinosaurs would have persisted. But it's very possible that dinosaurs then might have evolved the brain size and the capacity to make tools and so forth. So, for example, there are several species of dinosaurs that existed right before the impact of the asteroid or comet, who had very large brain size relative to other dinosaurs. So one dinosaur had roughly twice the size of what it might have been predicted by body size alone. Another dinosaur had, and these are raptors, these are meat-eating dinosaurs, had a brain that was 6 times larger than the brain of a crocodile. And these are meat-eating dinosaurs that we have reason to believe may have hunted in packs, and social skills may have evolved from that. And they had specialized forearms for seizing prey and for hunting. And those forearms that we've all seen in pictures may have evolved into the tool making capacity. It is true that no other species has yet evolved technological competence, but it's possible they might. If something happens to humanity, we all go away, and there's plenty of reason to think that could be possible. We self-destruct. Another species may come up right behind us and evolve. We know that various species are highly intelligent, birds, cephalopods, dolphins, whales, and so forth, but they're not natural contenders because they have no manipulative appendages. But some do. Frank Drake, and we'll give him honor because this is his equation, used to suggest that raccoons were up next. They're omnivores, they have flexible hands, they hunt in packs, they display highly adaptable behavior, and are keenly intelligent. Drake's opinion is good enough for me, so I'm gonna place my bet on the raccoons. Let's look at F sub C. That F sub C represents that proportion of, or that fraction of technologically intelligent aliens who are attempting to communicate with Earth at our present time. It reduces the F sub I, or the fraction of intelligence species, that by recognizing that not every intelligently or technologically competent species is attempting to communicate with us. They may be too shy. They may be listening instead of transmitting. They may have budgetary constraints. It maybe they tried it for a while and gave up in despair. Maybe they're incurious. Maybe their religion forbids it. Who knows? But Drake's original formulation of F sub C is, let's say, naive in many respects. First of all, it ignores the amount of time it takes for a transmitting or receiving telescope to make a single circuit through the number of stars or other objects on their target list. If, for example, they're targeting 500,000 stars and it takes 5 years to complete this task, then that 5 years is their duty cycle. And if each star is targeted for 10 minutes, this reduces F sub C by saying that they are not only communicating, but right now, at this moment, communicating with us and directing their transmitter directly to us. On the other hand, Drake didn't consider that the first detection may not be of an intentionally transmitted signal, but of a byproduct of, ET's activity, unrelated to any effort on their part to communicate with us. For example, we might detect their city lights or artificial chemicals in their atmosphere, or or atomic particles in the contrails of their interstellar spacecraft, spillovers from their lasers that are pointing at light sails that push uh, their spacecraft or propel their spacecraft. When we consider all these types of technosignatures, of which the intentional effort to communicate with planet Earth is but one small potentially part of it, it effectively greatly increases the value of F sub c beyond what was contemplated by Drake. Drake also failed to consider that ET might be right here in our own solar system, surveilling us with the intent of communicating once it has decoded our language and our culture. In such an eventuality, then F sub c will in due course be, for all intents and purposes, equal to 1, or 100%. Consequently, F sub c might be best reframed as denoted as F sub d, d as in detectable. F sub d is different from F sub c in that it is not simply a function of ET's attempts to communicate, but also in our capabilities to detect ET's technosignature, be that technosignature its deliberate attempt to communicate with us or anything else. So let's use the example of ET's city lights. It's impossible, of course, to see ET's city lights with any current telescope, but in the not too distant future, we might be able to detect city lights of aliens, in our galactic neighborhood anyway, with large groups of space telescopes working in tandem. We have the technology to do this. It's just a budgetary thing. We could do it tomorrow if the billions and billions of dollars necessary to do it are allocated. Using using F sub d as an example applied to these city lights problems, it becomes a function of the power of our telescopes to see their lights and the distance and brightness of ET's cities, that is to say, the distance between us, and a function of how bright those city lights are. Whereas Drake's F sub c is a static figure, F sub d is a dynamical interface between the respective powers of our two technologies. Okay, now we come to L, the final figure, the final factor in Drake's equation. L is Drake intended to signify the number of years that a technological civilization persists in its attempts to communicate with Earth. However, in more general terms, it's usually meant to indicate the number of years that a civilization simply exists, period. In other words, L represents the length of time before it self-destructs or meets some other ignoble end. If both target lists are long, then transmitters and receivers won't line up. We've discussed this in previous videos where our receiver and their telescope have to align in space. If we're pointing in different directions, they don't line up. With L, we're talking about lining up in time. If the two civilizations don't exist at the same time, according to Drake, then they won't be able to communicate. Now, speculation here has basically boiled down to once again, between a conflict between the optimists and the pessimists. If you recall that the earliest modern SETI theorists wrote in the early 60s at the height of the Cold War, when with nuclear Armageddon on everybody's mind. I mean, I personally remember ducking and covering as a little boy, in school. It was not hard to imagine at that time that L was a very low number, something on the order of 100 years or something. In which case, no contact would be possible. But these were the days before the agricultural miracles meant that there would be ample food supply. It was the days when population growth seemed exponential. Now, of course, it doesn't. Um, you know, early SETI scientists had lots of good reasons to be pessimistic. Today, a pessimist might look at the environmental degradation and climate change and come to a similar conclusion. Optimists also have lots to point to. I mean, you ever read Steven Pinker's 2018, what I think is a classic, Enlightenment Now? It's a classic of optimistic thinking. Pinker paints a picture of an inexorable worldwide progress across decades, centuries, and so on, including large increases in per capita wealth, literacy, life expectancy, attained educational levels, and concomitant decreases in hunger, poverty, violence, child mortality, warfare, and on and on. Okay. A SETI theorist, Nick Bostrom, put it this way: there might be a great winnowing or a great filter that lies somewhere for all alien civilizations. The pessimists would say that filter lies in our future and we're doomed. The optimists inherently believe that the filter is behind us. We've made it through the worst of it, a bit worse for wear, but we made it. And now a bright and great future opens up to us as members of the Galactic Club. The generally accepted view that L represents the time that ET is online, that is actively transmitting signals, is simplistic in yet another way. ET might signal directly to Earth only for a very fraction of the amount of time that it is detectable by other means. Okay, so whether or not they're signaling to us, their city lights are still there for us to observe. Therefore, L should be taken more broadly to mean that the time in which an alien civilization is detectable by any means. Sometimes L is taken to be the amount of time that a species persists. For on Earth, a mammalian megafauna like ourselves typically go extinct after about 1 million years. But I don't buy that argument at all. Homo erectus is extinct. They're not with us today, but they presumably evolved into Homo sapiens. Their tool-making skills didn't perish with them, but were passed along and improved upon. If hominid fossils are examined at 1 million year intervals, we see very distinct different species. But if you look at them 50-year intervals, you don't see any discrete break. So whatever Homo sapiens might evolve into, probably with a large artificial component, that's a successor to our species, may be perfectly capable of conducting SETI if it chooses to. Drake also failed to consider that one long-lived species may spawn other civilizations. Now, as you know from previous videos, I'm not a big fan of galactic colonization theories, but if one civilization is able to colonize, then the expansion may be exponential. Colonization was never considered in the Drake equation, but other SETI theorists have added it to revised versions of the Drake equation. Drake also neglected to consider that the first detection of an alien civilization might be right here within our own solar system by either detecting a probe or some other artifact like 2001's The Space Odyssey monolith on the moon. If we ever do discover such an artifact or probe, it doesn't really matter whether the progenitor currently persists or has gone extinct. In either way, we've made contact. So the lifetime or the L of that civilization becomes irrelevant. So in summary, Drake provided a useful heuristic for the very, very first generation's first generation of SETI thinkers, but the entire artifice that he created is creaky, let's say, and frankly, right now hinders fresh thinking and should be swept away, because Frank Drake himself thought that N equals L. In other words, and that was his license plate. His nice license plate said N equals L. That all the other factors cancel each other out. Um, that that's what he felt, that they all cancel out to one, leaving just L by itself. But if L is completely unknowable, uh, uh, other than meeting our first ET civilizations and asking what they might know of the matter, it serves no particular purpose. And even if we knew exactly what L was, and even if we could precisely calculate N, it wouldn't help us. We'd still have to plow through the galaxy star by star, or as I like to prefer as an observational methodology, to go simply field of view by field of view. Um, Either way you do it, you still have to do it. And it doesn't help you to know what N is. You still have to look for that needle in a haystack. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. I'm John Gertz, SETI theorist, and hope I'll see you next time.